Good evening, everyone. I'm Senator Sally Harrell, and I'm excited to be hosting tonight's Senate 40 Town Hall on Public Safety. Senate 40 geographically encompasses a large part of what we might consider the Atlanta suburbs. I actually have 10 cities that are represented in the area. That would be Brookhaven, Chamblee, Doraville, Dunwoody, a small section of Sandy Springs, most of Peachtree Corners, part of Norcross. I have the city of Roswell, but I actually don't have any voters in the city of Roswell because the river is the dividing line and my district goes somewhat into the river. So that's a little strange. I have one backyard in the city of Atlanta. I have the city of Tucker, as well as where I live in Senate 40, which is in unincorporated DeKalb County. So public safety is a really big topic that encompasses much more than we can address in one evening. But since the chartering of new cities has brought big changes over the past couple of decades to how police services are delivered in the Atlanta northern suburbs, I thought it would be good to provide kind of a bit of a primer on how our police services work. So tonight, our panel of 5 experts will discuss 1, how our police departments are structured, 2, what the current state of crime is in our communities and how that has been impacted by the pandemic, 3, thoughts and actions that have been taken in terms of reforming our departments, and 4, how we share resources across community boundaries and whether or not DeKalb County as a whole has the resources it needs to keep all of our communities safe. But before we get started with all of that, I want to thank the city of Dunwoody for hosting tonight's town hall and providing the technology. The Georgia General Assembly actually does not provide its members with the support for conducting virtual town hall meetings, so we are super appreciative for the support from Dunwoody. And a special thanks goes out to Mayor Lynn Deutsch and her staff. I also want to thank my communications director, Amy Swigert. Amy, if you can give us a wave, for her help in planning this town hall meeting. So as I mentioned, tonight we have 5 experts with us. And so I am going to introduce each one of them to you. We have Chief Atkinson from the city of Doraville. Chief Atkinson has worked for the city of Doraville since 1993. And in addition to his police work, Chief Atkinson also served as the acting city manager in 2020, after which he was promoted to his current position of chief of police. He has worked from many different positions, including serving as the division commander of criminal investigations. He has a degree in political science, as well as a master of public administration, and is a graduate of the 216th session of the FBI National Academy. Second, we have Chief Grogan of the city of Dunwoody. Chief Grogan has served as the chief of police for the city of Dunwoody since its formation in 2008. Previously, he served for 28 years as the deputy police chief for the city of Marietta. He is a master of public administration and is a graduate of the 193rd session of the FBI National Academy. He has served on the International Association of Chiefs Police Human and Civil Rights Committee since 2006. Also, we have City Manager Brian Johnson from Peachtree Corners, and that is in Gwinnett County. Like I said, he's the city manager. He brings to the job experience managing 2 other cities, here, Garden City in Georgia and Anniston in Alabama, as well as military experience in the Navy and the U.S. Army, and a degree in political science, as well as a Master of Public Policy. Next, we have Gary Yandura of the city of Brookhaven. Chief Yandura is the chief of police for Brookhaven, having launched the department following the formation of the city of Brookhaven in 2013. So this is our newest police department. Previously, he served 24 years in just about every position in the Lake Forest, Illinois Police Department, and he has served as the chief of police in Hiram and College Park, Georgia. He has a degree in criminal justice, as well as a master's of public administration. He serves on a number of boards representing interests including mental health, juvenile justice, and child well-being. Finally, we have Zach Williams. Zach is the Executive Assistant and Chief Operating Officer of DeKalb County. Prior to serving in this capacity for DeKalb, Mr. Williams served as County Manager for Fulton County, in addition to Assistant County Manager in Brownard County, Florida, and Assistant City Manager in Coral Gables, Florida. He has a degree in criminal justice and a Master of Public Policy. In 2010, he was named a Credential Manager by the International City and County Association. So let me say a little bit about how this panel discussion is going to be run. The actual panel discussion will last approximately 1 hour, leaving 30 minutes at the end so that we can take questions from the public. So you guys ready? Okay, so the first question we're going to address to all of you. And if you could respond with maybe about 2 or 3 minutes, then that will allow us enough time to get through the rest of the questions that we have for tonight. So I will call on you in the order that we've decided to go in. So the first question is just simply tell us about your police force. How many cars do you have? How many officers do you employ? How long has your police department been in existence? And what is the population size in the area that you serve? Chief Atkinson with the city of Doraville.
Good evening. Thank you, Senator, for allowing me the opportunity to join you and join this town hall this evening. The city of Doraville, we have 49 sworn officers, and that includes command staff, road officers, as well as detectives. So that's all sworn officers. 12 of our officers speak a language other than English. So we have several bilingual officers, and some speak more than 2 languages. Our vehicle fleet, we have 52 vehicles, roughly. On a good day, we'll have that many. And our population in the city of Doraville is a little over 10,000, but I believe I always like to say that is a nighttime population, because it could be a little bit misleading, because if you're familiar with the city of Doraville, we have 285, Buford Highway, and Peachtree Industrial. So we have a large number of cars and people who travel through the city on a daily basis. So when I give the population, I always say we have a nighttime population of around 10,000. And the city has been in existence for, we're celebrating our 150th year this year.
So the Doraville Police Department is one of the ones that's been around for quite a long time. So long, we probably don't really even know how long it's been in existence. I'm glad to hear that you have officers that speak different languages, as I know Doraville, which is one of the smallest cities in Senate 40, has a lot of diversity. So that's good to hear. Okay, Chief Grogan.
Sure. Senator Harrell, thanks for having me tonight. I appreciate it and look forward to the conversation and the questions. The Dunwoody Police Department has 64 sworn positions and 14 civilian positions. And as you mentioned earlier, the city started December 1st of 2008, and the police department actually started on, believe it or not, April 1st of 2009, April Fool's Day. And but it was a good time for everybody at the time. We serve a nighttime population. The new census, the 2020 census, says it's 51,683. But we have obviously Perimeter Mall right off 285 and a lot of office folks and things like that. So our daytime population, some people say it's over 100,000. Pre-COVID particularly. Today, right now, not so much because a lot of the office folks haven't come back to work quite yet at the campus. But we have our department generally reflects the community we serve with two exceptions. One is the Asian population. We're about 10% Asian, and we just have one Asian officer. And then we don't have enough females. So that's one area where we'd like to improve on as well. But other than that, we generally reflect our community.
Interesting to think about things in terms of daytime population and nighttime population.
Sure.
As a civilian, I never would have thought about that, but they're very different people because of people coming into work.
Sure, it makes a huge difference to the demand of services. As Chief Atkinson was talking about the traffic, crashes, all the other things that go along with that. And for us, we have Perimeter Mall, and when it was operating before COVID, about 18 to 20 million people a year visit Perimeter Mall. So it's
Right.
quite a lot of traffic.
Right. Brian Johnson from Peachtree Corners, tell us about your police department.
Well, we have a rather unique setup here. So the city is about 9.5 years old. We were incorporated July 1 of 2012. And at the time, Gwinnett County Police Department had been providing the police services to that area of unincorporated Gwinnett. So the city decided the city and Gwinnett County looked at the situation and said, the city could prevent the county from charging a special public safety millage rate associated with police and fire, which the city, when it was incorporated, could have. But the city said, no, what we'd like to do is allow you to continue to levy that millage inside our, corporate limits. And in return, you continue to provide the service you did before the city was created. So we have an intergovernmental agreement with Gwinnett County for both police and fire. And so they provide the service similar to the way they do when we're unincorporated. So in our case, our officers that serve Peachtree Corners operate out of the West Precinct. And it covers all of Peachtree Corners, the Gateway 85 area, a large section of unincorporated Gwinnett down in Jimmy Carter Boulevard, Pleasant Dale Road, that area. And, it's a little bit hard when it comes to numbers and logistics. I mean, West Precinct has, pushing 200 officers and, a lot of resources, but it's not just Peachtree Corners. As a municipality, we're 45,000 people. Other than that intergovernmental agreement, we're providing service in mostly the conventional ways.
Thank you. That is the same structure that the city of Tucker, which is also in Senate 40, has. So that's very different from the other recently chartered cities that have their own police departments. What's interesting is recently the Carl Vinson Institute on Government at the University of Georgia did a study on the effects of municipalization on DeKalb County as a whole. And what it showed for part of unincorporated DeKalb County, the part that I actually live in, is that forming yet another new police department would drain resources out of DeKalb County to the point that it might be difficult for DeKalb County to meet the needs in the rest of the county. So that is something a little bit later that I would like Zach Williams, COO of DeKalb County, to address. So you're set up where you have an intergovernmental agreement with Gwinnett County, just like Tucker has with DeKalb County, could be a good solution to that problem. So we'll be interested during the panel discussion to see how that's been working for you. Thank you. And Chief Yandura with Brookhaven.
Thank you, Senator, for having us, and look forward to the rest of the town hall. Our department, I was actually hired in April of 2013, and we started our police department, went into effect with everyone employed. We actually had a ceremony with DeKalb changing hands, giving us the authority over the city of Brookhaven on July 31st, 2013. So we got it going in about 3.5 months. When I started, we had a phone. I had a phone and a computer, and that was it. So it was a lot of work to begin with. And it'd be real hard to start up a department today, I think, with the environment out there. We have 82 officers right now and about 16 civilian employees. That includes a crime analyst, which is very important to us, and the support staff that we need. Our population, our nighttime population is about, it's a little under 60,000 now. We just grew a little bit. We took some land away from Zach Williams in DeKalb County. We border Atlanta, Dunwoody, Sandy Springs, DeKalb County, and Chamblee. So we got a lot of area to cover. The hardest part for us to cover right now is on the other side of 85. The most recent was La Vista Park, where we border two sides of Atlanta. We get along with all of them. You know, some of our problems that we've had is getting around town, because we're a very long structured city. We were originally from 285 to 85. Now we go through La Vista Road and Briarcliff. We started with 54 officers and 54,000 population. With their annexations, as I mentioned, we're a little under 60,000 now. So we grew to about 82 sworn officers. Just trying to keep up with that right now.
That's a pretty big city, and it does stretch. It's long and narrow from north to south, right?
Yeah, that's the hardest part to cover. So we do have a lot of businesses to take care of right now. One of the recent annexation we had was Target, but we're looking forward to Choa is actually building, I think it's supposed to be one of the largest children's hospitals in the country right now, 19 stories. And we just had a DeKalb Chiefs meeting there this morning, and that went really well.
Great, thank you. Our newest police department, followed closely by Peachtree Corners. Zach Williams, you're DeKalb County, so we'll close this question with you, but you have the biggest job because you cover the largest area. So tell us what that looks like for you.
Sure, and thank you very much, Senator. First of all, I just want to say I'm honored to be here with such exemplary public servants, and I commend your leadership for pulling us all together and initiating this conversation. So thank you. A little bit about DeKalb County Police Department. We were established in 1914. So when the county was established in 1822. So 1914 is when the police department was established. We currently have approximately 700 officers in uniform, approximately 200 civilian positions, including E911. Our responsibilities for patrol include patrolling a population of approximately 563,000 residents. That includes the cities of Tucker and Stonecrest, which we are patrolling via contract. And that's direct service. And then indirectly, it's the entire county, in that our bomb squad or aerial units are on occasion, unfortunately, but called in to assist our friends and neighbors and addition the different municipalities. You had a question about vehicles. With our take-home program, officers are allowed to take home their vehicles, and including specialty vehicles, we have approximately 800 vehicles in our fleet.
So you provide specialty services to
Yes.
these smaller police departments.
Yes, and in particular, the helicopter, when Chief Grogan talks about perimeter mall, or, there's areas, if on occasion you have that need where it's tracking people, and you cannot expect each municipality, it would not be cost effective or wise because of the frequency of use, to have their own helicopters and things like that. So we are called on occasion to assist our partners, and that's what we do.
Great. Glad you're there. Okay, so the next question it won't be addressed to everyone. It will be addressed, so our panelists know, to Doraville, Brookhaven, and Dunwoody in that order. So the question is, we have seen a lot of stories about increases in crime in the headlines. Have you seen that in your community? And if you have, tell us about the nature of that. And do you feel like the pandemic has affected crime in your community? We're hearing also a lot about gang activity. Have you seen any of that in your communities? Chief Atkinson.
Actually, overall, our crime has decreased slightly, but we have seen an uptick in certain types of crime. Property crimes, entering autos, cutting catalytic converters off of vehicles, those seem to be higher. And unfortunately, we've also seen an increase in the use and possession of firearms while committing some of these crimes since before the pandemic. One issue that we are consumed with, that we're having, and you hear about it in the news, is street racing incidents where car enthusiasts will take over intersections, parking lots, things of that nature, and do burnouts, donuts, and it's really a dangerous situation. If you look at some of their videos, you have people right up at the vehicle, basically filming so that they can put it out over social media. So that has really taken off since the pandemic. I don't recall us having those kind of incidents or to the magnitude that we're having them pre-pandemic. But every week, just about now, we get information that someone is organizing a takeover. And I can tell you that all of our law enforcement agencies in the area, around the metro area, not just Brookhaven and Dunwoody and Chamblee and Doraville, but all in the area, have done a good job of getting together. And DeKalb County has a lieutenant that is unbelievably on top of it, and sends out great information. So, to answer the question, overall, our crime is a little bit lower, but we have seen an uptick in certain areas.
Thank you. I know the mayor of Peachtree Corners, Mike Mason, was giving me an earful about something that happened very recently with street racing in Peachtree Corners. So I know that's something we're seeing in a lot of places. Chief Yandura, what are you seeing in Brookhaven?
In Brookhaven, we're seeing violent crime actually has remained stable or decreased in certain areas a little bit. And just like Chief Atkinson was saying, our property crimes have increased tremendously. Entering autos, to bring up what was said earlier about more guns out in the street or whatever. It seems like a lot of people leave guns in their cars lately, and I think 1 month we had almost 30 guns stolen in one area of the city. I wish we could do something about that, but a lot of them are just checking unlocked cars and they're getting in. Some of these groups are going around and breaking windows to get into the cars. Our stolen autos are up a little bit. And as far as the pandemic, it seems like the pandemic's caused a huge increase in dealing with mental illness type calls that many times associated with crimes that happen, domestics, people going into stores and just acting out of sorts, and the store owners calling us because they're getting attacked or things like that.
Right. Chief Grogan with Dunwoody. Oh, unmute yourself.
Got it.
There we go.
For Dunwoody, most of our crime is property crime that we have to deal with. And we do have violent crime as well, but typically it's a very small percentage of our overall crime. In 2020, we saw a significant decrease in overall crime of about 30%. But even in that context, our violent crime went up 15% in 2020. Again, we have small numbers, so it's even a 15% increase may only be a few incidents because of our small numbers. And then for 2021 through August, I think, our overall crime is up about 10%. Again, below the level it was in 2020, where we were down so significant a number. But our violent crime is up 40%, and which is pretty significant for us as a city. We've had 3 homicides this year and a lot of other gun violence. That's been driving it. Really, what's been driving it the most is aggravated assaults, whether it's with a weapon or some other type of instrument. And a lot of it is, some of it's stranger to stranger type situations, but a lot of it is driven because of domestic situations. Our domestic calls for this year are up 41%, which is a humongous jump for us. And a lot of the aggravated assaults are happening during these disputes. And so that we've seen that happen. We're fortunate we haven't seen a lot of the racing in Dunwoody. I think our roads are the way they're designed. We don't have a lot of long straightaways and things. We've been very fortunate, knock on wood, that we haven't had too many incidents. But we have seen an uptick in our people in a mental health crisis, as a lot of communities have. I think the pandemic has only made that even worse for people. And then we've seen an uptick, it seems to be of late, with a lot of overdoses. And we've probably in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we've delivered Narcan to 4 or maybe 5 different people that had overdosed. And so we've seen an uptick in that as well, I think, during the pandemic.
So we're all feeling a higher level of stress due to the pandemic. And it sounds like you are seeing that reflected in what's happening in your community.
Definitely.
Right. So the next question number 3, will be directed to Peachtree Corners in DeKalb County. And if this question kind of encompasses, if you want to tell us a little bit about, the last question too, in terms of what you're seeing, it fits into the question. So you can share that too. The question is, what are the biggest challenges currently to meeting the public safety needs of your area? Brian?
Well, a lot of it's kind of conventional, is how do you take finite resources and stretch it across, a large area and serve a very diverse, interest. I mean, you've got everything from people living in neighborhoods that don't have a crime problem, but they want more police patrol, presence patrol, to specific areas that have crime or the moving around, where we're dealing with some street racing, like Chief Atkinson said. In fact, he might be just chasing them north up into Peachtree Corners just to get it out of his backyard. But no, those challenges, dovetailing on what, some of my, fellow panelists have said about the pandemic. There's a higher level of stress that some people have. There's maybe more time at home. And that goes both ways, meaning people aren't going into the office, they lost their job, there's, stress there. But then we also get a lot of, and it's probably more property crime, petty crime, but people who normally would not be at home witnessing certain things, but now they are home witnessing things, and they're calling in and saying, hey, my neighbor this, or I'm seeing this, creepy guy on the street that. I mean, so it's a drain on resources that, you probably didn't see when everybody was, gainfully employed at a place of employment, not their home. So, those challenges are both conventional and unique that we're currently having. And, we can talk about it later. Our, particular challenge in Peachtree Corners is, of course, to capitalize on the strength of having police provided by a very large police department, but couple that with trying to make sure that they are as responsive to the community as we can get, because you can't get it. The challenge there is, a city like Doraville could be very intimate with the population because they don't have as broad of an area to cover, and they can be more attuned to the political winds of law enforcement versus, what we've got. So just trying to capitalize on the strengths and minimize the weakness, but we're not necessarily unique in that regard. Everybody on this panel is dealing with the same thing.
So one thing that it seems like since you do have you're dealing with a large police force, so you're sharing with the rest of the county, but every year you have to renegotiate an intergovernmental agreement, a contract, right? So does that give you, if you're having concerns in one area, does that allow you a chance to address that concern when you renew the contract?
Well, no, so our agreement is a long-term one. I mean, standing up a police department or allocating resources to be a municipal police department takes a lot of time. Our termination clause in the IGA is 18 months. So if we wanted out, we would have to give them 18 months. And the police chiefs on this panel could tell you, I would need every bit of that 18 months and then some to try to stand up a department, to serve the city. We do annually, though, go through an operational discussion about, hey, what's kind of working, what's not. Now, I will say that what we do as a municipality, and really this would be the same even if I had an internal police department like, the previous two cities that I managed, we did, is trying to maybe take some resources and be and provide certain things to law enforcement that would be force multipliers. A good example of that would be, we have a lot of, kind of formed out of technology, Tech Park Atlanta's and Peachtree Corners. And so we like to embrace technology a lot. And so we've deployed, 50 license plate recognition cameras throughout the city that have, Gwinnett County Police Department has direct access to. And in addition to, over 800 pan, tilt, zoom video cameras in other areas of the city that they have access to. So it's kind of a force multiplier. It's our way of saying, you know what, we don't necessarily, or we're not necessarily in the business of providing you more officers, and no department has enough officers. But, for a much, reduced cost, we can, put 50 LPR cameras out in the city for about the same amount that it would take to, add one officer. And so it's kind of our way of saying, here's some force multipliers, here's something that can help. Now, nothing will ever replace the human being in uniform being, working. But if they do have technology, it can, extend their reach. And that's kind of how we attack things.
Great, thank you. We're going to have a question about innovations as well. So, Zach, what are the challenges for DeKalb County?
Much like what our previous panelists have mentioned, we're grappling with the same issues, and they kind of, how would I say, they interrelate or dovetail. When we had the conversation where each of the panelists talked about the impact of crime during COVID, and as certain types of crimes have increased, notably violent crime and aggravated assaults, that's something that the county is also experiencing. And what that does, it translates to a busier and more stressful work environment. So our officers are moving, just like everyone else. It's call after call after call. What does that do over time? Well, that makes an impact. It takes an impact on the individual officer, and over time it begins to wear them down. And so it makes it more difficult to recruit and retain officers because of the workload in large part. So it's a challenge for the county, and it's a challenge for any police department. We, like my friend Brian is doing in Peachtree Corners, or doing force multipliers and such. But the big challenge in 2021, during this pandemic and post-pandemic, is keeping officers on board, recruiting them and retaining them, because one, there's competition for these same positions among other police departments. But if we look back on 2020, a lot of people who heretofore may have gone into law enforcement are choosing not to. So what we try to do is make our department as attractive as possible, not only with salary, not only with benefits, but the work environment as well, to counter our challenges of recruitment and retention.
So recruitment and retentions, that's the first time I heard someone bring it up. Raise your hand if you've been having issues with that as well. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so that's a across the board challenge.
Absolutely.
Is recruitment and retention.
It's
Okay.
a universal problem, not just for us, but
Yeah.
just generally for law enforcement.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, question number 4. This is going to be addressed to Doraville, Brookhaven, and DeKalb. There's been a lot of talk about the need for police reform. Do you agree with this? And what are some of the best ways you think we might tackle police reform? This is an opportunity to showcase any innovations your police department may have already enacted. Chief Atkinson?
Yes, we're always looking for ways to improve how we interact with our community and the services that we provide for them regarding the police department. We're always striving and always going to be transparent in what we do. And sometimes it might look like we're not being transparent because we're not able to put a statement out or we're not able to put a comment out as quickly as social media can get things out there. So we're always looking to improve how we do things. And I think a key component in the reform of policing is making sure that we're hiring, our hiring practices are where they should be. If you start off with a good officer, chances are, that they're not going to get out there and do anything that is going to cause you concern. And we also have to provide, training for our officers and our employees. The Doraville is a certified agency through Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police. So what that means is we have to meet several standards, and we have to not only meet them, we have to prove that we are actually doing the things that the standard calls for. So back last year, when we saw a lot of the unrest and we saw things like 8 Can't Wait was a movement that was being discussed then. Well, we were already doing that, those 8 things in Doraville. Yes, I think that there's room for us to improve. Absolutely. If we're not trying to improve every day, we're going backwards. Quite honestly, some of the innovations that we are doing in Doraville, and we're a little bit behind Brookhaven and Dunwoody and Chamblee, but I believe Mr. Johnson mentioned license plate readers. We are moving in that direction with license plate readers, and we are also moving with speed detection in school zones. I know that Chief Grogan, Chief Yandera, they are involved in that as well. And as Mr. Williams said, those are all force multipliers that, you know, we all don't have enough officers, but we have the capability of finding out if something is happening.
Hearing that term a lot, forced multipliers.
Absolutely. So that's some of the things that we've been doing.
Here's something I remember about Doraville. There was a bill, it was before I was elected, but there was a bill that was going to require local police to work alongside ICE. And I asked the former mayor whether she supported that bill, and she said no, because she said it was so important that the local police department have good relationships with everyone who lives in Doraville. And I thought that was
absolutely. We don't want to isolate anyone in the city of Doraville.
You want them to trust you.
We want to make sure that they are reaching out to us when they need us. And something that I have tried to talk to our officers about and our employees is, if the first time someone meets a Doraville police officer is when they need them, then we haven't done our job. We want our officers out there, you know, making contact in the community and being seen and being involved. And we want to make sure that everyone knows that they can count on us.
Thank you. Chief Yandera, Brookhaven.
Sure. You know, to bring up the reform, I just don't like the description or the term. I think there's always room for improvement, like Chief Atkinson said. And we're always doing that. You know, a lot of the problems I think occurred today are a result of a few bad apples within those police departments, which, I mean, in the private sector and any public sector, you're gonna have a couple of bad apples that you have to deal with that bring disrepute to the rest of the agency, really. Like Chief Atkinson said, we're also a certified agency. You know, we try to get along with everyone. Before we even started, we reached out. We have a number of Hispanic speaking officers and Asian officers. We reached out to the Latin American Association, which is in our city, and currently the Mexican consulate is in our city. So we reached out to both of them. We have great relationships. We even started up citizens police academies, Hispanic Citizens Police Academy, which has gone a long way, and we're getting a lot of cooperation from that community right now. You know, as far as changes in laws and geographical area that we're in right now, we've got a social justice commission that the city just started up. That's going along very well. You know, we were very transparent right after the unfortunate incident that happened in Minneapolis, which I think everyone agrees was very, very bad. So we started a transparency project right after that. So we actually have on our website our calls for service, our use of force, everything that we actually do, and everything's available to everybody. So we're getting a lot of kudos from that, from the Social Justice Commission. They're winding down now and going to have a report, I think, submitted to the city in December sometime, but that's been ongoing for about 3 months. We actually put those folks through use of force, and it opened up a lot of eyes. And I think that's what most people need, is to see actually what we're doing and understand some of the decisions that the officers have to make out on the road, which sometimes you only have a second or 2 seconds to make. Some of our innovations that we're dealing with actually goes along with some of the you know, reform or progress, as I like calling it, is we started up a drone program. It's a first responder drone program. We modeled ours after Chula Vista, California, so we're only, I think, the second city that's actually doing it. We have 15 officers licensed through the FAA, and we've got a number of drones, 2 launch sites, one on the north end of the city, one on the south end of the city. And any 911 call, when we're fully staffed, any 911 call has a drone respond to it. And usually that beats our officers to the scene. And once the officer gets there, it's eyes in the sky for the officers and for the dispatch center. So they could actually monitor and let everyone know what's going on. A lot of times an officer won't have to respond with the drone there. If it's a suspicious person, a lot of times these people aren't really suspicious. People are just reporting them as that. Another program we have is just like Dunwoody has a number of them. We've got about 200 license plate readers. That's been a great asset to us. We've arrested a murderer out of Texas recently. We end up with about 2 to 4 stolen cars a week. With the 200 LPRs that we have currently in place, we're getting about 3 million reads of cars going in and out of the city every month. And out of that, we're ending up with anywhere from 75,000 to about 100,000 hits on that. 98% of those hits are Department of Revenue hits from the state. And we don't even monitor those. We turn all that off. All we're worried about is stolen vehicles, wanted people, missing persons, and serious things. So with that all being said, I think we're going good. There's always, as I said, there's always room for improvement, and we're always trying to do that. New technology comes out. I'm a big one for technology too, so we're looking at all that. And just keeping up with changes with the laws that are coming up, because every day Supreme Court changes certain laws and we have to keep up with all that too. So
Right. And the legislature changes things too.
yeah.
The Social Justice Commission is something I'd like to hear more about. And maybe something like that could be replicated in other cities and other areas.
Sure.
Zach, DeKalb County. What kind of reform and innovations have you guys been working on?
Sure, and thank you for the question. And I was just kind of thinking as I was listening to Chief Yandura, and there's something we like to say around the county, and it's probably true in all local governments. What are our focuses these days? And we like to talk in terms of crime, COVID, and credibility. And there's often opportunities to have intersection of all of those, addressing all of those key issues. To the extent you are able to manage and address crime and, of course, the pandemic, that assures a certain level of credibility. Some of the reforms, to use that term, that the county has undertaken over the last 5 years under the Thurman administration in particular, assigning body cameras. So all of our officers are wearing body cameras. We have GBI, investigate anytime there's a critical incident results in a serious injury or loss of life, so that there's no thinking that DeKalb County is trying to hide anything. We bring in the GBI and they conduct their investigation. All uses of force are tracked by the department and we monitor them. And so that's just kind of keeping an eye, policing ourselves to ensure that we are looking out for officers' behavior. So those are some of the internal things: constant training, bias training, or anti-bias training, are all some of the things that we have been doing internally. But I would also want to highlight some of the things that we have done and initiatives kind of externally facing. And I would start with how we chose to use a lot of our American Recovery Act funding. And we determined it was important to invest a lot of those funds in crime reduction and crime prevention. So we have invested in mobile precincts to help set up shop in hotspots. So we'll go out and set up a mobile precinct. Flock cameras, I think Mr. Johnson mentioned, I think both Chief Yandura and I think everyone had mentioned using those types of cameras, license plate readers, that force multiplier, to use that term again. Funding 2 additional crisis nurses or mobile crisis nurses. That is a key. If you look around at what has happened throughout the nation, and unfortunately even incidents here in DeKalb, there have been times where had the appropriate resource been brought to bear on a situation, the outcome may have been dramatically different. So we recognize the need to stand shoulder to shoulder with mental health professionals to assist us. And so those mobile crisis nurses, those are mental health professionals who are able to go with officers and tend to persons who may be having a mental health issue, not necessarily a criminal issue, and help de-escalate the situation. Our police athletic league has been stellar for decades. We have a career development program where it's an 8-week program with youth mentorship, teaching life skills and things like that. We're strong believers of creating opportunities where our police officers interact positively with the community. So the Police Athletic League is an excellent example of that. Also, which goes back to our COVID, we do a food distribution monthly, and police officers or cadets are part of that distribution, handing food to people. So just creating a connection one-to-one so that it's not always a bad situation when you interact with a police officer. We have gaming with a cop, virtual summer camp, book bag giveaway. All of these are opportunities for our police officers to interact with young people. And then we are working with the ministers and pastors. Faith in Blue, it's a coalition between the police department and the various religious community. Monthly majors night out. So these are all the types of things. And a new introduction that we're particularly proud of this year is community service aides. These are civilian positions that work in and for the police department, responding to your non-emergency situations, maybe lost property or stolen property, certain types of report taking. And so all of these are just ways to interact with the public positively, while at the same time we're increasing our training and focusing on de-escalation and the appropriate use of mental health professionals. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm very interested in the mental health piece. My background is mental health. I have a master of social work. And so the idea of responding to those mental health calls a little differently is very appealing. I'm glad to see that you're working in that area. Brookhaven, are you doing something like that?
Yeah, that's one thing I forgot to mention. One of our innovations, well, it started with a meeting. BHL, which is Behavioral Health Link, is funded by DBHDD through the state.
Yeah.
Reached out to us for a meeting over complaints that they had with us. And I says, well, great, because we've got complaints about responsiveness from that group. Well, we met, and about 3 weeks after that, we were offered the opportunity where they provided a clinician. So we have an MOU in place and a clinician in place 40 hours a week through BHL at no cost to us, and it's subsidized by DBHDD. That's been a great asset to us. They respond with our officers. They're usually in the building, but they're also helping our officers out, because I don't know, most people don't know it, but more officers die from a suicide than they do from injuries during the line of duty. So it's affecting everybody right now. And
Yeah.
Excellent point, Chief. Yeah.
Yeah. So mental health needs, not just for the community, but the officers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. You were most talkative when we got to innovations. I'm going to combine for the sake of time, I'm going to combine the last two questions. And so this is a question that will be addressed to each of you. If you can keep your remarks to maybe just a couple of minutes, it'll help us stay on schedule. And so we'll have plenty of time for questions from the public. So, we all know we may have our separate cities, but we don't live in isolation, and we don't have fences around our cities. So tell us a little bit about how crime in another area may impact your area, and how you work together with the police departments around you and with DeKalb County to help combat that. And then when I get to you, Zach, I'm going to ask you about how you're able to meet all those needs. So we'll start with Chief Atkinson. Is the question clear?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think you would be hard pressed to find a day that goes by that our officers don't interact with Chamblee officers or with Dunwoody officers in some form or fashion, whether we're just meeting to give intelligence about something or we're actually assisting. We are constantly, and it's not only the officers, our supervisors. I feel confident I can reach out to Chief Grogg and Chief Yandura, and if I have an issue, and they'll help me out any way that they possibly can. Criminals don't actually know a lot of them don't know where the city limit signs are. So what affects Dunwoody and Brookhaven probably is going to affect Doraville. And so we have to work together. And I mentioned it earlier on the street racing uh, issue that we're having. That is a group that is all over Metro Atlanta. And as I said, the lieutenant from DeKalb County kind of heads that up, like the de facto head of it, I guess, and sends out the information. So we're all working together. We meet monthly DeKalb Chiefs meetings, and I can assure you that entering autos, that today is not the first time that has been said that we've had an uptick in entering autos in Doraville and Dunwoody and Brookhaven. So we are working together, and we have to build those relationships with those cities, and not only with our bordering cities, but with our state and federal partners also, and DeKalb County. I don't know that there's been a time that we haven't, that we've called on DeKalb and they haven't assisted us with whatever it is, as we talked about, air unit, bomb unit, those type of things. So, you know, it is imperative that we do work together. If someone exits 285 on Buford Highway, they can drive a mile either way and be out of the city of Doraville. So it's imperative that we interact and share intelligence and make sure that we're passing it on to our officers.
Thank you. Chief Grogan, City of Dunwoody.
Sure. You know, criminals know no boundaries. And so, you know, they commit crimes in DeKalb County, Atlanta, come up to Dunwoody, go over to Doraville, and there's, you know, incidents of this all the time. It's imperative our detectives work together. They know the other detectives in all the other jurisdictions, and they work very closely together. And we all have each other's phone numbers. And so we can pick up the phone when we have a need and say, hey, can you help me out? And there's never been a time that DeKalb County or any of the other cities hasn't stepped up and assisted. We had the recent, in Dunwoody as an example, the explosion on a Sunday of the apartment building that blew up. And this was a humongous event. I mean, it was really, really bad. Sandy Springs and Brookhaven, which were two close agencies, came and assisted us with that. And of course, the DeKalb Fire had probably 100 firefighters there. It was a really big event. But things like that happen all the time. We had an incident the other day where someone was shot in the leg, and we used that technology we've been talking about because we had a good vehicle description, figured out what kind of vehicle it was. It was hitting on that technology all in our area. Chamblee eventually got that vehicle, ended up in a chase to Tucker, and the vehicle crashed, and they arrested 5 people from the vehicle. So we're able to very closely work together cooperatively in our area, our kind of northern arc, but also with all the other agencies throughout Metro Atlanta. And you know, we couldn't be successful if we didn't work together. And so we're able to do that.
Thank you. Brian with Peachtree Corners.
I mean, in the interest of time, I mean, I don't have much to add. You know, this is an age-old, you know, understanding, you know, mutual aid agreements, MOUs, the relationships that these, you know, police chiefs on this panel are talking about are critical. You know, and sometimes there are opportunities to use technology. You know, Chief Grogan just talked about, you know, a good one, LPR cameras in multiple jurisdictions. If they're linked together, you can, you know, you can digitally cross over boundaries as you're working a case or looking for where a car is going. You know, there are some other ones. We have locations. We border Sandy Springs in one location where there's a large retail center. We have a program which allows, there's a company that has one single pane of glass to pull in multiple cameras across multiple, you know, devices and manufacturers. So they're not just flock, there are other ones. And the program allows business owners to have that camera feed into the single pane of glass where, police department can pull up cameras that they don't own, that are privately owned, but the owner has allowed access to it. And so, you have those kind of things, HOAs allowing their cameras to be pulled in by police departments, are all ways across different lines that you need to link. So, it's being done, around rising tide lifts all boats, or vice versa. We all know that, and, we're all working together very well.
Thank you. Chief Yandura, City of Brookhaven.
I think a lot of it's been said already. Criminals don't know boundaries, and we shouldn't either. I'll give you just a couple of examples that I think spell it all out. Most recently, Sandy Springs, us in Atlanta. This made the news in the last couple of days. Nighttime home invasions that have been happening. We had a similar one. We made an arrest. It's two different groups, but we're sharing information. 5 of them were arrested in Dooley County. We arrested a driver from another group that was also doing the same thing. They were targeting celebrities and sports figures, girlfriends and relatives and things like that. So it just shows that we work together. I mean, and 4 of our cities have a combined SWAT team that we help each other with all the time. And we've had more SWAT call outs this year than any other year so far.
Which 4 cities are those?
It's Sandy Springs, Dunwoody, Brookhaven, and Johns Creek.
So you do a combined
Yeah,
SWAT
it's
team with those.
North Metro SWAT, and they train together, and they've been very successful. We've got kudos from some of the federal agencies helping them out. Another thing, we help out at Atlanta. We've got 4 canines right now. We've been going, believe it or not, DEA has been calling us down to the airport. So we go down to the airport twice a week to help them out with drug cases.
Wow. Okay. Zach, can DeKalb County keep up with all this? They've given you kudos. They've said good things about you.
Well, and hopefully anyone who is participating in this understands the teamwork that actually goes into policing. And in 2021, we all recognize that we cannot operate as an island. We are interdependent, and we look forward to working together, quite frankly. Something that came to mind when Chief Grogan was talking, and he mentioned the fact that everyone has each other's phone numbers, and there's formal means through MOUs like Manager Johnson mentioned, and informal by phone calls. But we know that if we call for assistance, and each department knows if they call for assistance, we will be there, Johnny, on the spot. I remember in 2020, in the summer of 2020, when there were instances occurring at Phillips and Lennox at the mall, vandalism and such. And then there was a threat to Perimeter Mall. And Chief Grogan asked for assistance, and the rest was history. There was no damage done. DeKalb County sees all 764,000 residents as DeKalb County residents, regardless of municipal boundaries. We respect and honor and support the police departments and the roles and responsibilities of each municipality. But they know if they need our assistance, we're there. We have Lieutenant Donahue on our team. His role, his responsibility, quite frankly, as the intelligence commander, is working with other jurisdictions, directly with Gwinnett PD, with the cities, with Atlanta, Clayton, feds, the state, and coordinating information. We share information back and forth through our jurisdictions. So
yep.
What I would hope that anyone watching this recognizes is that the men and women in blue who are out there running into danger, they don't overthink the patch on their arm. When duty calls, they support one another, and we as leaders support them doing that and provide them with the resources necessary to make that happen.
Great, thank you. It's good to have you all together in one place so that we can see these interactions and these relationships, and it's good for me to meet all of you too.
Yeah, we actually all like each other.
You can tell. Okay, we're going to segue now to the final section of this town hall, which is to take questions from the public. I feel certain that we have some people who are very anxious to ask questions since we have you all here. And so I am going to hand the program at this point over to Amy, my communications director.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for such an informative conversation. We're getting great feedback on this discussion, so really appreciate everyone's participation. For our attendees, if you would like to ask a live question of the panel, I'm going to ask you to use the raise hand feature on the Zoom, and you can generally find that feature if you click on the 3 dots. Some of you may see that on the bottom of your screen. Some of you may see that at the top of your screen. And if you click on that, you should see a raise hand feature. So if you can raise your hand, then I'm going to call on you as soon as I see some raised hands, and I already do. And I'm just going to go in order. We'll get to as many questions as we can. We did have a couple of questions in the chat. I've encouraged those folks to ask their questions live, but if for some reason they can't find their raise hand feature, I'll pose it to the panel. So the first person that I have with a raised hand is Jerry Russell. So we're going to give just a second for Jerry to be promoted to a panelist to be able to answer, ask a question. But Jerry, are you on?
I'm on, but I did not mean to raise my hand, so I'm trying to lower my hand.
Okay, got it. Okay, we have somebody that just is by the name White. I don't have a full name, but I have a raised hand. Go ahead.
Are you there?
Yes, we are.
Yes, I have a question. When we call the police, why do they put us on hold? And why do they come late?
And which area do you live in? Would you mind us asking?
I live in the Chamblee area.
Okay. So we don't have Chamblee representatives here, but maybe some of the other panelists can answer the question.
I certainly would not presume to speak for any other jurisdiction, but I do know that staffing 911 is a challenge universally, much like staffing police officers. So it well could be a workload issue, a staffing issue. It could be much what happens in a lot of 911 centers, which is a challenge that we have to work through collectively. We need to better educate when people should call 911. So when this gentleman had a real emergency that he's calling for, in most 911 centers, up to 40% of the calls that are going in are not true emergencies, but they're taking time of the dispatchers and call takers to answer and to find some way to dispose of. So it could be staffing, it could be clogged phones with calls that aren't true emergencies.
Anyone else want to add to that? Okay.
Okay. Our next question is going to be from Pat Willis. Pat, I think you're on. You just need to unmute yourself.
Okay. I have a question, but I do want to speak to what you just answered. It's frustrating to me as a citizen to not have a way to call the police department except through 911. And I had an identity theft issue one time. And when I tried to call just, like City Hall Police Department, I was told to call 911. So that's an issue for us as citizens too. But my question is really, I'm asking you to speak to the value and the potential of both home cameras and neighborhood cameras at strategic intersections or entrances to both preventing crime and then to solving crime. Because we're looking at investing as a neighborhood in some of those cameras, but we'd really like to understand just how's it going to pay off for us plus the police department?
In Brookhaven, I know we have a number of neighborhoods that have cameras they put in place. And I'll give you a good example. We had actually on North Druid Hills a couple of months ago, a lady was just walking down the street after jogging, and gentleman stopped his car, got out of his car, and tried dragging her into his car. He fought her off within an hour. He did it right in front of one of our flock cameras. Within an hour, he was arrested and locked up. So that just gives you the benefits of it. Personally, myself, I have cameras around my house. I bought some cheap cameras or whatever, but I look at them as a tool. And a lot of times you're not going to catch somebody before they do something, but it helps our investigations out tremendously after the fact. Also, we had Chambly had a kidnapping recently. We had a similar thing recently too, that we tracked Chambly tracked it was an unknown person kidnapped a baby, ended up in, I think it was somewhere around Paulding County or whatever, or Carroll County. And they tracked the kidnapper all the way there and apprehended him and retrieved the baby back.
I would add, as far as home cameras, a lot of them have become very cost effective now for you to have, and you have the alerts on your phone and everything. And I know that we've received alerts from homeowners that looked and they had a camera that went off and somebody was breaking in their house and they weren't at home, and they were able to call us, and we sent somebody out there, and caught the burglars. So I think they can be pretty effective. And as what Chief Yandura talked about, we've got probably 7 or 8 neighborhoods or apartment complexes that have the LPR cameras. And when an incident happens, if somebody, say in a stolen car, comes in your neighborhood, if you've agreed to let the police be hooked up to that, you'll get an alert. The police will get an alert, and so we'll know that stolen car is in there and maybe can arrest them before they do anything like steal something from somebody. But if there is if the car is not stolen, but they commit a crime in there, then it's easy to go back and look, and it'll help us solve the crime afterwards.
Great. Okay, the next question is from Chris Griffin. Chris, you're on. What's your question?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to know if the county or any of the cities provide some kind of residency incentive for police and first responders.
We do in Dunwoody. We provide a housing stipend if they live in the city of Dunwoody of $700 a month. And we have about 24 officers that live in our city, 5 of which actually own a home, and the rest live in apartments. But yeah, we've always offered a housing stipend. Over the years, it started out at $300 and it moved to $500, and a few years ago it moved to $700. And it's been a very popular and effective tool for us to get our staff to live in the city. And that's important when you provide take-home cars for everybody as well. You're saving on gas and wear and tear on vehicles. And if we have a major incident, we have a lot of people who live in the city. So that's very helpful for us.
In Brookhaven, we found out what Dunwoody did on their housing allowance or whatever. So we had to outdo them, and we went up to $800 a month. But I agree with Chief Grogan. The housing allowance helps us out tremendously. We only have 14 officers living in town, but they're tremendous aid. When something serious happens, they could get there quickly. And the take-home cars are a big benefit to all of our officers.
Yeah, so currently, the county has been working towards developing housing purchase program, but guess what idea I just got 2 minutes ago. So I thank you for the question, and I thank my 2 friends, the chief of Dunwoody and Brookhaven, because we will be looking to do something like that. Brilliant idea.
Great. I'm going to see if we've got another raised hand. So we have another raised hand from Kelly Harris Wright. Kelly, you're on.
Thank you can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, because I just realized I was on mute. My question is, I've heard two types of cameras described, and our neighborhood association, our HOA, is discussing flock cameras, but I heard the term LPR, if I'm not mistaken, used by Mr. Grogan. Could you please define that for me so I can take it back to?
It's the same flock. They make LPR cameras.
Oh, thank you very much. I didn't know if it was two different kinds of
No.
cameras or one and the same. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, if anybody would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. I didn't see any other raised hands for just this moment, but I am going to throw out a question that we got in the chat, which is Michael Dowmett would like to know what community groups, both general, racial, and ethnic, does your police department partner with and how?
So I
Go
can
ahead.
start. I mean, when you say which, I would simply say all. I mean, DeKalb County is so diverse. We have ongoing partnerships and outreach to various immigrant communities, focused in large part. There's significant concentrations in and around Clarkston, the Latinx community. You name it. We try to be what DeKalb County is and reflect our community through our recruitment efforts, through our outreach efforts, through our partnerships, through our crime watch efforts. So if they're in DeKalb County, we're looking to be partners.
Anyone else?
And in the city of Doraville, we work with our different groups as well. We partner on different things. As a matter of fact, we're working with the Latin community in DeKalb County this weekend on a vaccination drive at the Doraville MARTA station. And that's not the first time that we've partnered with them to reach our immigrant community. Another group that we are just now starting to kick off something is with our faith-based organizations, trying to bring the police department together with faith-based organizations. Chief Yandura mentioned the National Faith in Blue weekend, which was actually this past weekend. So we've started that discussion, and we'll be working with those leaders and reaching out to them.
Great. And I'm going to ask Chief Grogan, since I know Mr. Dowmett is a Dunwoody resident.
So we work with various groups, whether it's our faith-based community. We just did a child safety seat check with our Hispanic community, and our business groups, we try to work with them as well. So just the various groups.
Great. Okay, I've got another raised hand from Edward Aqua. Okay, Ed, you're on. Edward, sorry. Edward, you just need to unmute yourself. Are you there, Mr. Aqua? We just need you to, there you go.
Yeah, we had a problem on the street where I live, Littlebrook, but the homeowners association, saw these information in the police blotter, and it was very helpful because they wanted to have all the residents report on streetlights that were not working, because our neighbors are now flashing their own spotlights, and it really impacts people not being able to fall asleep. We have mostly older adults in our place, and the other question I have has to do with issues of scams that a lot of the older adults are getting either by telephone, and I don't know whether there's any information that could be provided to the homeowners association that would help us distribute that to everybody some of us have been actually impacted by some of the scams, and that would be something very helpful if that information was going to be provided, because I'm sure the collection of all of the police forces have that type of information.
Yeah, we've posted some stuff recently on some of the recent scams that we've seen, and we'll certainly try to make an effort to send it out to all our HOA groups as well. One of the biggest ones that we've had that people have fallen victim to recently is a phone call from someone that tells an elderly person that their grandchild's been arrested for some really bad crime. It's maybe somebody might be dead or close to dying, and they need so much money to bail them out of jail, but you can't send it in because you can't bring it because of COVID, so you have to send it. And we've had people ripped off for a lot of money. And then they usually call back and say the other, maybe it's a hit and run of some type and an injury. Then they call back, oh, the charges have been upgraded because the person died. And now we need a lot more money. And so we've had a few fall victim to that. So we'll definitely we posted some information on social media, but we'll try to get some information out to the HOAs as well.
Great. We have a question from, I know I saw another raise hand, and just a reminder to everybody still listening, if you want to ask a question, just make sure you use the raise hand feature, go under your three dots where it says more, and then you can find it there. Angela Barnett has a question. Angela, you're on.
Hi, my question is both for COO Williams and Manager Johnson. I want to ask a little more detail about your agreements between the municipality and the police departments, and if you have experience before the city was formed and after, what type of relationship does, say, the city council and the mayor have with the police departments, and how is the information shared, and is there a liaison? What does that look like? How does the department receive information? Do your residents feel more connected with the police department having that council as a go-through? Just generally talking about how that relationship works. Thank you.
Brian, would you like to start, or would you like me?
Go for it.
Okay, and thank you, great question. And so in DeKalb County, we have two municipalities that we contract for law enforcement service. One is Tucker, and the other one is Stonecrest. And the way we have designed these memorandums of understanding, each one is a 10-year memorandum of understanding with, I believe, a 2-year out clause if the city was unhappy and wanted to change direction, except in some exigent circumstance. I believe it requires a notification, a time to cure, and then a time to announce that they would be going in a different direction. And that whole process, I believe, is a 24-month process. Each of the cities has a major who is directly responsible for the liaison with that city. So, so actually, I apologize, have lieutenants who are liaisons with those cities. And they're responsible to essentially function as if they were the police chief for that city. I mean, they're responsive to the needs of the city managers and the council. Obviously, ultimately, they report into the county's police chief and up to myself, to the CEO. But we wanted to make it as seamless as possible because we very strongly believe that it is a model that can work, and it does work if the people are committed to making it work. So the data that is being shared from a city's perspective, it is like they have their own police force, except they don't have to, go purchase vehicles and build police stations and such. So we think it's working very well.
So I would just add a few things. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, organizationally, these agreements are such that you have a section of a larger police department that's kind of assigned to that area, and organizationally they still have to report up through the county. Operationally, they do report to the city on almost a literal sense. There's a little bit of operational guidance they still take from the headquarters. As a city, it operates like Mr. Williams said, very similar to if we had our own police department. We're a council manager form of government, so even if we had our own, mayor and council are not directly involved and have no authority over police operations. So it's really police chief to city manager, in this case, precinct commander to city manager. But at the end of the day, these things come down to really this. There is an economy of scale that we get out of this. Gwinnett County Police Department has assets and resources that Peachtree Corners could not have if it had its own police department. And that's the benefit of it. But you do lose a level of intimacy with the community when they are, reporting and coming from a much greater organization. It's a trade-off that you just have to monitor. You can mitigate it to some degree with communication, but that's really the age-old trade-off is that intimacy with the community versus the economy of scale and resources you get from a bigger organization. And right now it's working for us. We have not had, a crime problem. We haven't had the community say, oh, they're out of touch, but it has certainly happened in other locations. And, that's the dilemma or the consideration we have every day. So it's not for everybody, but it might be for somebody.
I think we are about out of time, but so I'm going to call on one more person for the very last question. Debbie S. from Atlanta. Debbie, you're on.
Hey, how are you? Thanks so much for this informative discussion. I was curious about your, what the operating procedure is. Do you guys discuss racial profiling and how you handle that? Or, I know that was kind of a vague question, but I'm curious if you could briefly, I know it's a brief amount of time, but if you could address how your department deals with that.
Sure, and I mean, in Dunwoody, we have obviously policies against that. We train on those policies. We also have trained on fair and impartial policing and procedural justice. So we're very well versed in the dangers of that, and our officers certainly are as well. And then we, of course, monitor officers' activity to make sure that they're not exhibiting any signs of any kind of bias in their actions.
Any other?
And at Brookhaven, we the same suit as Dunwoody. We're very transparent. You go to our website, look at everything. As a matter of fact, I just received an email today on a survey that our Social Justice Commission just came up with, and it's looking pretty good as far as they're asking how you react with the police. Are the police respectful of you and things like that. So I haven't reviewed it yet. Like I said, I just got it, but we're looking forward to reviewing the whole thing.
And DeKalb's in the same position as Chief Grogan and Doraville.
Yeah, Doraville as well. We monitor our officers, their camera, body worn camera, in-car video camera, to make sure that they're doing what they should be doing.
Great. I think we're about at time. Right on time.
Well, I just want to say a huge, big thank you to our panelists. I feel like this was a really good conversation. I'm thrilled to see the teamwork across city lines, even across county lines. We should, I think some of you even got some ideas tonight from each other. So this is something we should do again sometime. I appreciate the time you've given to it, because I know it's the evening and you've had a long work day, and I just want to share with you my gratitude for you being willing to do that. So thank you very, very much. And also a big thank you to the city of Dunwoody for your technology help.
Sure.
It has made this go so smoothly. This is probably the smoothest Zoom meeting that I have ever participated in. So thank you for that. And lastly, thank you to all of our participants. We would just be up here talking to ourselves if you didn't take the time to attend tonight. So thank you for being involved, people in your communities, and caring enough to show up. And I wish everybody a good night.
Have a good
And
evening.
I just want to
Thank
make
you.
one point. We
Yeah.
will be posting this replay of this event on Senator Harrell's public Facebook page. So if you want to share this discussion with your friends, that should be posted sometime tomorrow. So thank you all for coming.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Right.
All right.